It's a colossal construction site that's literally changing the face of Europe. A project designed to make life easier for millions of citizens, to smooth the flow of goods, and even to reduce carbon emissions. But how do you pull off such an incredible feat? By creating a corridor that connects Scandinavia to the Mediterranean seamlessly, along a route stretching over 5,000 kilometers. If the project sounds crystal clear on paper, it's a whole different story on the ground. To bring this insane vision to life, extraordinary works are underway. For example, under the Alps, where they're digging the largest railway tunnel in the world, or under the Baltic Sea, where they're building the longest immersed tunnel on the planet. From north to south, east to west, in this new video we're going on a tour across Europe's multi-billion euro construction sites that will permanently reshape the map of the continent. Welcome everyone to this new episode of Looking For. To really understand this overview, we first need to understand the framework. It can be summed up in 4 letters. TEN-T, the Trans-European Transport Network. It was adopted in 1996 by the European Union, with the goal of eliminating the barriers between member states' transport networks. In short, to create a unified transport space across Europe. To do that, massive works need to be carried out all over the place. And the numbers give you an idea of the scale. In total, the plan calls for the construction or modernization of 15,000 kilometers of high-speed rail lines, while connecting 94 ports, 38 major airports, and solving 35 cross-border bottlenecks. According to the European Commission, nearly 10 million jobs could be created through this project, and the EU's GDP could rise by 1.8%. One of TEN-T's main ambitions is to get rail transport back on track as a credible alternative to road transport. Right now, road remains the dominant option across the continent, with more than 70% of freight moving by truck. The result? Roads are overloaded and CO2 emissions are soaring. So the EU wants to reverse that trend. By 2050, at least 50% of freight transport will have to move by rail or waterways. The goal is also driven by an environmental vision. Powered mostly by electricity, trains emit far less CO2 than trucks or planes, which both rely on fossil fuels. This project isn't new. Since 2013, 9 major corridors have been identified as vital to connect Europe's main regions. Routes stretching from Dublin to Marseille or Hamburg to Constanza, a kind of nervous system for Europe. To make this happen, the EU is putting serious money on the table through the Connecting Europe facility, which funds digital, energy and transport infrastructure. It's part of the EU budget, and for the 2021 to 2027 period, the transport component alone amounts to 25.8 billion euros. It may sound like a massive budget, but it's actually pretty realistic given the sheer scale of the works involved. Let's take a look at the Scandinavia Mediterranean corridor. It's designed to connect Narvik in Norway, even though Norway isn't part of the EU, all the way to Valletta, Malta's capital, passing through Copenhagen, Innsbruck, Rome, and Palermo. A corridor that stretches across the continent, mobilizing people and machines, especially at 2 key points, deep in the Alps and beneath the Baltic Sea. Both are monumental undertakings. The first, starting from the north, is set to become nothing less than the longest immersed road and rail tunnel in the world when it opens in 2029. Connecting Denmark and Germany, the Fehmarnbelt tunnel will save massive amounts of time and revolutionize logistics. Today, to get from the Danish port of Rødby to Puttgarden on Germany's Fehmarn Peninsula, there are 2 options. Either take the ferry, a 45-minute crossing with fixed schedules and limited capacity, or drive around by land, a detour of nearly 160 kilometers. And this route between Copenhagen and Hamburg is one of the busiest. In peak summer, lines can get ridiculously long, nearly 3 million passengers between June and August 2025. with peaks of 150,000 passengers over just 3 days, according to the ferry operator. And that's not even counting freight. It's gotten so bad that some people actually fly between Copenhagen and Hamburg just to save time. To fix this overloaded system, Germany and Denmark agreed to build the tunnel in 2008 after long negotiations. When it opens, Denmark will be just 10 minutes away by car from Germany, and only 7 minutes by train. With this tunnel, trains will finally become a real alternative to flying, while also providing a much faster rail and road connection for freight between Scandinavia and Central Europe. Unlike the Channel Tunnel, the Fehmarnbelt Tunnel isn't bored through the ground, it's immersed. It lies directly under the seabed, 40 meters deep. 89 watertight sections, each 200 meters long, will be towed, submerged into a trench, then assembled and placed 40 meters below the sea. Designing an immersed tunnel like this is a delicate operation because it has to meet very specific constraints. For example, the tunnel sections must be light enough to float during transport, but heavy enough to stay on the seabed once submerged. They'll rest on a gravel bed that acts as the foundation, installed by a remotely operated robot. To make that perfect bed, an 18-kilometer-long trench has been dug in the Baltic seabed. About 15 million cubic meters of sediment have been excavated. On land, teams are building the 89 giant tunnel sections at a dedicated factory on the Danish coast. Each standard section is 217 meters long, 42 meters wide, and 9 meters high. Each one weighs more than 73,000 tons, 10 times the weight of the Eiffel Tower's metal frame. Absolute monsters of reinforced concrete. The factory itself is just as impressive. The construction site covers over 500 hectares. Inside, 6 automated production lines are building the watertight tunnel sections. Robots weld 1,500 tons of steel every week to music. In total, the factory will use 360,000 tons of steel and 3.2 million cubic tons of concrete. By February 2025, 9 of the 89 sections were completed, 7 standard and 2 special ones, about 10% of the tunnel. The first element was poured in May 2024 and inaugurated on June 17, 2024 by King Frederik X of Denmark. That ceremony marks the start of the immersion phase of this €7 billion project. Denmark is covering most of the cost. A colossal worksite employing more than 3,500 workers from 40 different countries. Once lowered and connected with watertight joints, the sections will form a continuous trench, which will then be covered with sediment and rocks to protect it from marine currents and ship anchors. In total, the tunnel will have 4 separate tubes, 2 single-track rail tubes and 2 double-lane road tubes. But the project also raises a lot of concerns, especially environmental ones. The Baltic Sea is home to protected species like the harbour porpoise, which is endangered in these waters. To avoid disturbing them, acoustic monitoring systems have been installed to pause construction whenever porpoises are nearby. Sound deterrent devices are also used to keep them away. Artificial reefs will be created as well, to give new shelter to marine life that loses part of its habitat along the tunnel's path. Another unusual feature of the site, it's literally mined in the most literal sense. The Baltic Sea is full of unexploded bombs and mines left over from World War II. Around 1.6 million tons of old munitions lie on the seabed of the North Sea and the German Baltic. Before digging the trench, bomb disposal teams had to inspect every square meter of the seabed. Unexploded ordnance, including 125-kilogram depth charges, was found in both Danish and German parts of the Fehmarnbelt and has been safely removed and neutralized. A dangerous and meticulous job. Explosive. That's also the word to describe the second massive project on this corridor. The Brenner Basis Tunnel. A strategic passage between Austria and Italy, and one of the few ways to cross the Alps. At 1,370 meters above sea level, the Brenner Pass is the lowest and busiest crossing between the north and south sides of the Alpine Ridge. Every day, more than 2,200 trucks pass through. That constant flow creates noise, pollution, and traffic jams that choke the Alpine valleys. Residents of Italy's Isarco Valley and Austria's Tyrol region have been suffering from it for decades. So, Austria and Italy came up with a radical solution: go under the mountain instead of over it. Once completed, the Brenner Basis Tunnel will be the longest railway tunnel in the world, 64 kilometers long. It'll surpass Switzerland's Gotthard Basis Tunnel, which measures 57 kilometers and currently holds the record. And, by the way, if you're curious about the engineering secrets behind that project, I'll leave a link to my video about it in the description. The Brenner Tunnel will connect Fortezza in Italy to Innsbruck in Austria via a railway line dug under the Alps, reaching depths of up to 1,720 meters beneath the mountain. Passenger trains will travel at 250 kilometers an hour and freight trains at 120 kilometers an hour. A huge contrast with the old historic line, over 150 years old, that winds through steep mountain slopes where freight trains struggle to climb. This isn't a new project. Construction began back in 2011, but it's now entering a decisive phase. In September 2025, teams achieved the final breakthrough of the exploratory tunnel, connecting the Italian and Austrian sides for the first time. The works are divided into 4 lots, 2 of which are already complete. The tunnel is scheduled to open in 2032. Originally, it was supposed to be ready for 2025. Once operational, the trip between Fortezza and Innsbruck will go from 80 minutes to just 25. A major time saver, made possible by the efforts of thousands of workers toiling every day in extreme conditions. Digging more than 1,000 meters under the Alps is a Herculean task. To move forward, they use tunnel boring machines over 100 meters long and weighing around 2,700 tons. These giants chew through rock a few meters at a time, grinding it down with steel teeth. Depending on conditions, they advance between 10 and 27 meters per day. But under certain parts of the mountain, especially beneath rivers, things get tricky. The rock there is soaked with water, and using a TBM would risk a collapse, so they have to freeze the ground. The principle? Inject liquid nitrogen into the rock to freeze it. At -196 degrees C, it freezes the ground effectively down to -35 degrees C. Once the ground is frozen, the area becomes stable, allowing the tunnel boring machines to continue safely. This method, called ground freezing, has been used on other major projects, but never on this scale. Workers operate in extreme conditions, a surreal world of ice and stone deep inside the Alps. The ventilation system is another huge technical challenge. Over 64 kilometers, trains travel at high speed, generating both heat and air pressure. Parallel ventilation tunnels have been built to refresh the air and remove the heat. In case of fire, these same tunnels serve as emergency exits, a vital dual function. Every 333 meters, an emergency passage links the 2 main tubes. To remove the millions of tons of excavated rock, the site uses a gigantic conveyor system stretching over 66 kilometers. These conveyors carry 5,000 tons of rock per hour. Colossal. Without them, 190 trucks per hour would have to drive through Alpine roads. A mountain giving birth to a mouse? Not at all. According to estimates, the tunnel will be a powerful economic driver for this part of Europe. The number of trains will double compared to existing lines, and they'll travel much faster. Even more important, the Brenner will help shift a large share of freight transport from road to rail. Currently, 2.5 million trucks cross the pass every year. The goal is to flip the ratio, from 70% road and 30% rail to 30% road and 70% rail. Then there's the ecological impact. While trains are clearly greener than cars or planes, building such a tunnel still raises questions. It's expected to generate around 2.8 million tons of CO2 equivalent. But according to a 2024 study by Euret Research, the tunnel could offset those emissions in 5 to 18 years, depending on how much freight shifts from road to rail. And finally, a key piece of information: the cost. Originally estimated at just over 6 billion euros, it's now between 8 and 10 billion euros. Half of it is funded by the European Union, the other half split between Italy and Austria. And that's where our deep dive ends. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to learn more about the construction of the world's longest tunnel in Switzerland, I'll leave the video right here. See you soon on Looking For.